Hello, everybody. Welcome to Build a Tribe. This is a new series called Founder Fridays, where we try to address frequently asked questions by founders. And today we are going to talk about IDO, Initial Dex Offering. We all have heard a lot about IDO. It is a relatively new phenomenon in the world of cryptocurrency. And we all know that this is a kind of a new step after ICO. And we know that maturation of the cryptocurrency industry as a whole has led to the creation of IDO. So a lot of founders find themselves wondering about what actually makes up for a successful IDO.
I think IDOs are not a new phenomena. It has existed for over 3 years now. And essentially, before this, people used to launch their tokens on centralized exchanges. So if you had to launch your token, you had to go to an exchange and say, "Hey, list my token," because otherwise, how will people buy your tokens in the first place, right? So this was a pretty inefficient, centralized way of launching tokens. With IDOs, what you have is you have platforms that are decentralized. It could be a simple exchange like Uniswap, or it could be a platform like Polka Starter that helps you launch your token. But essentially, these are permissionless. So you don't have to take anyone's permission to launch your token, which is what makes IDOs way more exciting than ICOs. And this is a massive task in itself. It is something that makes a huge difference uh, in terms of a project's lifespan. You have to make sure when you are doing an IDO, uh, there is uh, enough retail uh, who wants to buy your token in the first place, and why do they want to buy the token in the first place. Uh, a couple of years ago, it was very easy. You float a white paper, the idea looks pretty exciting, and there is maybe a POC or something like that, and then people went and bought the token. That is not happening anymore. You need a solid product. You need to figure out who your users are. You need to answer all the basic questions, and then make sure that there is some kind of a validation which says that this startup is going to do something. It is not this era is not going to tolerate people launching tokens without substantial backing in terms of either a product, either VCs who believe in this, or the third thing that matters here is if there is some kind of traction or a potential for revenue out there which accrues to tokens. Is it solving a problem that is large enough? All of these questions retail is going to ask to the project founders, right? And that means managing all of these things before going ahead and doing an IDO. There are also fair launches. Fair launches are what somewhat a new phenomenon, and this basically means not pre-mining, pre-selling in tokens to investors or to founders or to community, but essentially having an open token that anyone can go and buy at a fair market price from day one. So this is largely the gamut of IDOs, and this involves just an IDO involves uh, putting out a ton of content, uh, talking to a market maker, talking to exchanges. Even though it may be an IDO, you might want to list on a centralized exchange because generally the liquidity is higher there, and the tools to manage your token circulation are much better in a centralized environment. Uh, you have to work with a bunch of people who will communicate your launch uh, to to the retail janta. In that case, you will have to work with a bunch of vendors who will go ahead and make these things possible for you. Uh, in in a general scenario, an IDO is it just the planning to execution takes at least 3 to 6 months. It costs a lot of money. All of these things are expensive, and the ideal time to do an IDO is when you know that okay, now I have achieved some kind of product market fit or some traction, something that people can really look at and say, okay, yeah, now I want to bet on this in the first place. One other way of going around it is to have a large community. this community will essentially end up, end up using the product as well as buying the token. If you have users for whatever you're building, that's your community. Token holders are not your community. They're just speculators. Community is people who use your product or who identify with what you are trying to solve. And then these folks are the ones who may end up buying some of these tokens because they see potential in whatever you're building. So that's the core of IDO.
Are there any examples of an IDO very well executed that you could maybe talk about, or some red flags that as an investor or a user, if I am looking at a range of IDOs and how it's launched, which are the ones that I should not engage with, looking at red flags or how it's been executed?
I would say in terms of IDOs, it's very, very hard to say what was good or bad because there are various aspects. How do you judge an IDO? Whether you look at early investors' returns or whether you look at community, whether you look at token performance over a period of time, it's very hard to say black and white which IDO was good, which IDO was bad. Generally speaking, an IDO that gives good X to early investors is considered good. That product may go ahead and fail completely. Okay, so these two things are not very related at this moment. They will be in the future. And in terms of red flags, from a founder's perspective, I would say look at working with top of top launch pads. You don't want to be working with a mediocre one. If you're working with influencers, you should be looking at the most respected people in your vertical. You should not be working with any random person who has 1 million followers, right? And in terms of just communicating, the founder will have to be out there and communicate. Founder will need to go on YouTube, will need to go on Spaces, will need to figure out how that trust is built, because at a very early stage, you have little to show, right? In your mind, your project might be the next big revolution out there. But as a layman who's looking at hundreds of projects doing their IDOs in let's say, a span of few months, it's very hard to trust anything. So either there's product with traction, that's 100% a go. Otherwise, in most cases, the founder has to go ahead and build that trust and say, hey, I'm here. I'm going to make sure that this works. Put their credibility on the line. And that is when people who want to invest in these IDOs will come and hold your tokens. In any case, for an IDO, the biggest thing is to look at how many people are speculating and how many people actually use the product while they are buying the tokens. This is community, this is speculators, very different thing. If there is more community, that means the IDO is doing really well because it has organic support.
Right.
It is actually solving a problem for someone. If there are more speculators who go in a Telegram group and when Moon, when Lambo, when 10x, 100x, 50x, 2x, that means they are there for short term, which is to make money. This is not going to last.